Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Writing and Publishing Book for Business Owners. This is a really, really fun seminar that I have fun teaching because I love books. I love reading them. I love writing them. I love talking about them. I like stacking them. I like buying them. I actually have a problem with books. So there's lots of different things. This is a course specifically for you if you are a business owner or you've ever thought about writing any sort of business book or anything that just if you have thoughts or if you are a business owner and maybe you just want to tell a story, this session is for you. So really looking for Liberta. Good to see you again, Liberta. I'm glad that you could join us. Hopefully I'm pronouncing your name correctly. Yeah, I am a book nerd and a word nerd, as they say. Good. Hello again from Minnesota. It's good to see you. Has it snowed up there yet? I know it's like October, but you guys don't surprise me if it's snowed already. So, all right. Well, it's good to have you here. I know that there were some people that were saying that they were going to join. They might be a little bit late, but we're going to go ahead and get started. So just go ahead and let us know where you're from, Liberta. You're already here. Not yet. No snow just yet. Okay. Well, that's a good thing. I know you guys know how to throw a winter. That's for sure. But at least you have tater tot hot dish to keep you warm. For any of you who have never been to Minnesota, if you ever find yourself in Minnesota, okay, yes, the fried cheese curds are amazing, but I'm telling you, tater tot hot dish, that is designed to keep you alive for weeks. Just one meal. It is amazing, and you will be a believer forever. So it is good stuff. Anyway, so we're going to be talking about. I moved here in March from North Carolina. Have not had tater tot hot dish. It's epic. I'm telling you, it is. It's a showstopper. Sometimes a heart stopper, but it's really good. It's a lot. All right. So writing and publishing a course, or writing and publishing a book for business owners. There are specifics that I'm going to get into around writing and publishing a book that is specific to what we do as business owners, because again, there are certain things that you have to know just about book writing in general. And I'm not going to get into style or anything along those lines. I'm going to kind of leave that up to the individual license of the individual person who wants to write a book. But I'm going to get into this, especially some different things that you can think about in marketing. I'm also going to share with you at the end some free resources. And also there's a paid resource that you might be interested in, but you don't have to pay anything. There's plenty of free stuff that before you actually start getting down that path. So just a couple quick things. Please don't multitask. Stay focused on where we're at. Train our brains to stay focused over the next 50 minutes or so. And just make sure that you are taking lots of notes. You will get a replay in case you miss anything. And we're a little behind on trying to keep all the balls in the air with all these sessions that I've been holding. But I promise I'm going to get those links out to you for any videos that you may have attended and just didn't quite get the notes for them. So that's going to be on its way. So here's the thing. When, I want you to think about this from the context of like, you might be writing, you're like, okay, well, who am I to write a book, or I don't know how to write a book, or, where do I even start to write a book? I'm afraid of criticism. I'm afraid of ridicule. Where do I start? All this stuff, like all this head trash that shows up for us. I'm letting you know this is your opportunity to set that stuff aside, because realistically, I'm sorry, I'm blasting myself out of here with my shiny bright light all of a sudden, but that is all head trash. And I'm inviting you to set that stuff aside because someone needs to hear from you in your voice. Listen, it's absolute head trash, Alberta. And that's the thing that it's just time to remove that stuff. Even though you might say like, and I'll tell you, for example, in the early days when I was writing my first book, which was called The Time Wealthy Investor, and it was a book around managing rental properties. And then, of course, I started getting in my head, like seeing other people who had written very similar books about managing rental properties, even though they didn't have, it was just like Managing Rental Properties 101. Well, mine was called The Time Wealthy Investor. And it was really about gaining time wealth, about getting time back in your life and really focusing on the most scarce resources that we have, which is time. And people think, well, it's, they talk about there's a really neat scripture reference of, whoever can be trusted with little can be trusted with much. And a lot of times people often think about that in the context of physical things here on earth. But what about our time? What about our time here on earth? Are you being a good steward of the time that you're being given? And that's the thing that I think that if we looked at that, no matter your faith, are you being a good steward of the time that you're being given? Or are you allowing head trash to keep you from performing at your absolute best, given your God given talents? And I think that if I had allowed that head trash to exist and continue to rent space in my head, I thought for sure, I mean, that book never would have gotten printed. And there would be a lot of people's lives who'd be lesser for it. I'm not saying that because like the book was amazing. I'm telling you the book was amazing because other people have told me how much it's impacted their life. And I will be honest with you, if I'm looking at that from a truly disconnected and disassociated lens, I would look at that book and go, wow, that's actually a really good book. And I'm very proud of that book. So I just see a couple of people jumped in, just say hello. Where you're from, maybe what kind of business that you're in or what kind of work that you do, that you might be looking to write a book. So if you're here for and just scroll back real quick so you can see where we're about, because we are about writing and publishing a book for business owners. So just letting you know, we're right now we're talking about head trash. To set that stuff aside, no matter if something has already been written about that topic, I promise you have a different perspective on it and you have a different voice that others may need to hear from you. So just retired from Tesla. Wow, that's amazing, Lori. Good for you. From San Marcos, excellent. Glad that you could join us. Let us know what kind of what kind of things that you do, or what kind of work you're looking at, or maybe you're just looking to publish a book because it's that season of life for you. That's excellent. Let's get into the agenda. So the agenda items, we're going to be talking about the why, the things that you need to know before you ever lay pen to paper. Actually, I think I might need to change that. Does anybody write with pen and paper anymore? Like legitimately? Not to go on a side tangent, but has anybody seen the handwriting of our youth lately? Oh my gosh, it is horrible. I had somebody recently that did a handwriting sample for me, and they were a young person. I was like, oh my gosh, your handwriting is terrible. Anyway, so let's talk about the why. We're also going to talk about the where and all of the wheres that you need to consider. We're going to talk about the writing. We're not going to get into writing style. We're actually going to be talking about where to do all this and things for when you start writing, as well as what to do along the way when you are writing, because there's things that you can do that will keep you on task. The most important thing, you don't have to do this, but likely you're not going to get the results that you want if you don't pay attention to this one important thing. And then we're going to talk about publishing a little bit. So like I said in the very beginning, I actually do write notes by hand if I can do it fast enough. Holly, I have these little index cards that sit on my desk because I'm a kinesthetic learner. So I write a lot of things. I don't know if actually anybody has written. I'll be honest with you. I've written 8 books. I've never written one of them by hand. So if that's interesting to you, I think that's great. Let me get a drink of water here. Okay, so let's get to it right now. We're going to talk a little bit about publishing. And also at the end, I just want to let you know that I'm going to give you a free resource to a couple of different things, and also around book writing. It's a book writing course if it's something that you are interested in. I'm going to show you how to do that. So this is it right here. The Time Wealthy Investor, up there on the top left, is my first book. And all the other books that are sitting there, I've got The Judge, The Time Wealthy Investor 2.0, which was a rewrite of the original book. The Time Wealthy Advantage is the blue book. That was my 4th book. And then these, 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th books that are at the bottom, those came pretty fast after I published the Time Wealthy Advantage. And those were published. Those are shorter books. And I've written books. There's 3 books there that are about 300 pages. The Judge is about 90 pages. And the Strategic One Sheet, the Accounting Guides, the Sales Guide, and the Lead Generation Guide, those are all about 40 to 45 pages. So I've literally written books all over the map. And some of them are written as a fable. Some were written really more about technical stuff. So I've written all sorts of different ways. And I don't like to get pigeonholed into any particular style. So this right here, the Time Wealthy Advantage, I'm going to be referencing this book here. Unless you're a business owner, I really don't know that this book would make sense for you to purchase. You can, of course, purchase it on Amazon if you want. If you'd like it, if you are domestic United States and you'd like to purchase it, You can go to strategicboardroom.com and you can buy it right from there. And I will give you a free coaching session along with that. So I can sign it and send it to you. And but that is only domestic U.S. I know that I've got a lot of people who come from outside the U.S. I just don't have a mechanism to ship it overseas just yet. So we'll just going to leave that. But I'm not here to promote the book. I'm just going to let you know I'm going to be referencing it along the way. And I know people are going to be going and checking it out on Amazon. And if you buy it on Amazon, I won't even know. I won't even know that you bought it. So let's talk about the why. The first and foremost, the reason I referenced the time wealthy advantage is because I wrote in there the methodology called the Viper method. And the Viper method is really how I form and formulate a business. This will make sense here in a second because the Viper method is an acronym for vision, infrastructure, process, execution, and reporting. And the way that I'm going to be looking at the structure of my business happens in this order. So I'm looking first and foremost at vision in terms of where it is I want to go. We're going to come back to vision here in a second. But then I'm going to look at the infrastructure of the business, right? So now that I've created this business in terms of where I want to go and what that business, how that business is going to work for me, I'm going to look at the infrastructure, like the desks, the chairs, the software, the phone systems, things like that, how I'm processing credit card payments and all the different things are related to infrastructure. Process is simply how I do stuff, both from a tactical day-to-day perspective and from a strategic long-term perspective, like where I want to take this boat that I just built, for example. So there's a tactical and strategic planning component to process. Next is execution, and that is the daily, day-to-day stuff that I'm going to be making sure that I do that's going to be moving the needle towards my vision or towards my strategic plan, which of course is in alignment with my vision. So either way, I want to make sure that I'm defining up to 5 of the more critical things that are going to be the needle movers that I'm using, that I'm doing every single day. This is not having that to-do list of 57 items. This is really specific around the things that are going to be the needle movers. And then finally is reporting. Reporting is how effective am I being at the actions and activities that I'm taking. So all of this is pretty much how I look and construct a business framework, and I do it in this order. This is going to be relevant to you writing a book because I'm going to look at a book just as if like it's any other product or service within a business, and it has to follow that same framework. So before I get into that though, let me unpack vision a little bit because this is going to be very relevant to you in your book writing journey. So first and foremost is your vision, and that has 2 components. It has personal vision and it has business vision. Personal vision is it's really about what it is that you want as a human being. It has really nothing to do with income generation at all. If anything, you're looking at it from one question, the perspective of, where is it that you want to go? Where do you want to go in life? So in other words, if you're looking at this from a personal vision perspective, it's, if you woke up with $30 million or 30 million pounds in your bank account tomorrow, where do you want to go? Where do you want to land? Like, what would your day-to-day life look like if you didn't have to worry about income generation? The business vision perspective is great. How are we going to get there? Now, this is really, really relevant, especially for folks who want to write and sell a book, or even if you just want to write the book, you're like, I don't really want to care about selling it. I'm telling you, if you don't pay attention to the promotional piece, that book's going nowhere. And it could be a really good book, right? Ask me how I know, because I wrote a really good book and no one bought it. Okay. So what I'm saying is that I really want you to get focused on your personal vision first and foremost, because writing a book is not a small endeavor. And this is something that you have to think about. Like maybe it's just something that you have a story to tell and you just want to get out there. That's totally fine. And that may not have anything to do with business, right? But this is where you have to be really specific about what it is that you want. Because here's the problem. If you are going to create a business vision, let's say that you want to write a book and you're saying, hey, look, I want to sell 10,000 of these books. Great. That's a business vision. Selling that book, selling 10,000 books, writing the book itself might be part of a personal vision. But if you want to sell 10,000 copies or get that in the hands of someone else, that's a business vision all day long. And here's the problem is that when you create a business vision without first creating a personal vision, you're going to end up creating a life that exists to serve the business. And I'm just telling you that sucks, because if the business doesn't work out the way you're hoping, or if you've put all your energy and put all of your eggs in one basket around a business vision and never created a personal vision, never created a vision around what you want your relationships in your life to look like, what you want your marriage to look like, what you want your relationship with children to look like, or your neighbor or family or friends or whatever, I'm just letting you know that that just doesn't happen by remote control. And you end up drifting. You end up in life that's just getting, you're just winding up on whatever shore the economic or social winds happen to blow you on. All right. So I just want to make sure that you understand that is very, very important to make sure you take time and consider what your personal vision is. So let's talk about business vision for just a hot second. There's 3 C's of business vision, 3 C's of business vision. So if you're just joining us, this is about the writing and publishing course. So I'm just letting you know this is all very relevant to when you're going to write and publish a book. So if Lauren put texting is the new pigeon post, right? Pigeon English. All right. So here's the thing is the 3 C's of business vision is core purpose, core values, and client avatar. And when you're thinking about this from core purpose, core values, and client avatar, you're thinking about what is the specific purpose that your business is, what are the core values of that business, and what is the client avatar? Who is it being directed towards? Well, if you think of that same framework, think about it also from a book perspective, is the 3 C's of your book vision. Okay. So in other words, if you're thinking about this, like, what's the purpose of the book? What am I trying to convey? Am I trying to educate? Am I trying to entertain? Am I trying to make something aware? Am I just trying to be cathartic and get some stuff out there? Right? Whatever it is, what is the purpose of the book? That's really important to decide up front. When I wrote my first book, The Time Wealthy Investor, I was writing it very specifically for the mom and pop investor who had real estate, who had rental properties, and really make their lives a lot easier so they can be more focused on time rather than how they were making money. And that core purpose for me was, it was very, very evident when a property manager or a mom and pop investor picked up that book and they like, wow, this book is really, really good. They were very happy to read that book. Excellent. Now, the core values is important because how you demonstrate your core values, it's going to come out in your writing. So I would take the time to really think about and consider what the core values are that you represent. Now you might be thinking, well, that's kind of silly. Why would I actually take time to do that? Because if you're not clear on your core values going into a project like this, you're going to wander. You're going to wander in your conversation. And I'm just letting you know, like, that's really important because people who are in alignment with your core values will seek you out. People who are not in alignment with your core values, they're not going to waste their time on your book. And you don't want them to waste your time, their time on your book, because they're just going to be haters. They're going to go and they'll find every reason to tear it down. I had people that read my initial book and said, this book is for cheapskates. You should just hire a property manager. Okay. You think that property managers are really good at what they do? They're not. Most of them are terrible at what they do because they don't know how to set up systems or processes. So it was kind of interesting that I had, air quotes haters. I'm pretty sure I knew who it was, but anyway, they would tear it down because they were thinking that it was just lazy thinking. It wasn't. It was like, there's real value in knowing how to manage your properties on your own. So that was really clear about getting about your core values. So you might be thinking, well, how do I identify my core values? It's easier if you think of the extremes in your life. Okay. So if you're thinking of the extremes in your life, you're like, okay, well, how do I manage the extremes in my life? So let's say, for argument's sake, that you had a really, really bad event that happened in your life, or maybe a friend that broke your heart, or a former, relationship that kind of imploded. Well, what was it about that relationship that was so hurtful that you had to let that friend go? Like, even if it was a friendship and that friendship, kind of wandered off the reservation, what was it about that individual? What were they doing that was a violation of a core value? And here's the difference between a value and a core value. I value peanut M&Ms because they are delicious. Am I willing to give up peanut M&Ms for my relationship with our children? No, I'm not. No, I'm not. Do you see the difference? Right. So, like, I value peanut M&Ms, but not, and I'm using this as a silly example, but I'm saying, like, I value peanut M&Ms enough to go pay $10 for a bag of them. Right. And you're like thinking, that's a lot of peanut M&Ms. Don't judge me. Yes. And I keep them all here in my office by myself. But yes, so I value enough to part with $10 to go buy a family-sized bag of peanut M&Ms. But I'm not willing to sacrifice time away from my family to in spite of the peanut M&Ms. That's not what I'm willing to do. So the difference here is that a value, is a core value when you're willing to act upon that value. If it's a value like, I really don't care that much about it, then it's really not that much, right? I love peanut M&Ms. I'm not willing to stop what I'm doing right here in this moment, walk up to the Walgreens and go buy peanut M&Ms. I don't care that much. I much more value our conversation right now. Okay. Love those M&Ms, by the way. Try the Mexican ones. Oh, Martine, that sounds amazing. I did not know such things existed with more cocoa. All right. That is, wow. That's practically health food, right? Because the higher cocoa content. All right. We're getting off track here. All right. But that thing is though, that's why I'm saying like, I wish. So the thing is about your core values. The other side is also true. So think about relationships that you have that you really like. Or a moment in your life that you really adore. That also could represent a core value. Like I have wonderful relationships with people who work with me. I have relationships with people who work for me, right? And I absolutely adore every one of them because it represents a core value that's in alignment with the people that I want in my tribe. So think about like, man, or like a moment that you wish you could replicate that generally aligns with a core value of yours, right? So I value authenticity. I value integrity, doing what they say they're going to do, right? Those are all things that really are core values for me. So I know I'm making a big point about this, but I promise you, if you don't take time to do this, your words in your writing will come out more confused. It's much better if you just take a few minutes, probably maybe a quiet Sunday afternoon, and kind of jot these things down in terms of core values. So I do have a core values course. I'm not here to promote that. I'm just letting you know if it's something that you get upside down with. We're going to be emailing you anyway, the copy of this replay. And if you're interested in that, we can talk about that another time. I'm not here to promote that. I'm just letting you know if you do get hung up on it, there's a way that we can help you get unstuck. But the client avatar is the last one. And this is probably the most important, because if you're writing this to everybody, you're going to reach nobody. If you guys haven't figured it out yet, I've got kind of a quirky sense of humor, and I'm not overly brash. But I'm not overly, teetotaler either. Like I have a certain type of sense of humor that attracts a certain type of person. And some people who are like overly formal may think that I'm too casual. Other people who think I'm a little bit too stiff for them. Either way, I don't care. But the point is, it's important that you write this directed towards a specific avatar. I like an avatar who are, married. Generally, they're Christian, right? Generally, they have kids at home, right? Or have had kids at home, right? But do they need to check all those boxes? No, but I'm just saying that's generally the avatar I tend to attract, because that's the avatar that I know, because I happen to be a member of that avatar. So I'm just letting you know, like, you don't want to write to an avatar class or avatar group that you don't know or don't have any exposure to, right? That would be weird. Like if you were writing to a group of 14-year-old boys and you've never been exposed to that. It'd be weird, right? You wouldn't necessarily know how to speak their language. That's what I'm saying. It's really important that you identify the client avatar in advance. So we've covered that, and that's all around the why. So let's talk about the where, because when you start to think about all the wheres that you want to consider, you have to think like, oh, where am I going to write this silly book, right? So the thing is, where are you going to write? I cannot explain to you how important it is to actually consider in advance where you're going to sit down and actually write the book, because it absolutely will impact what you are putting down on the screen or on the paper. And it's also interesting to know when is your best energy of the day. Because if let's say for argument's sake, like my best energy of the day is in the morning, preferably as early as possible. And the thing is, if I don't remove myself from my house, because I don't generally like writing at home, and I certainly don't like working from home. But to me, if I go to like a really busy coffee shop, I will bang out like 15 pages, and it'll be really high quality. You want to know why? Because for me, in my beautifully built ADHD brain, if I'm sitting in my office, I'm going to be like finding all sorts of things to clean, right? The toilets. I'm like, oh my gosh, these toilets are so busy. Or maybe I'll go for a run, or maybe I'll just go skipping down the road, right? Whatever. Does anybody know what I'm talking about? Right? They'll find anything else to do. Um, yes, this is recorded. Yep, absolutely, Martine. So I'm going to find all this stuff that to do that I'm not, that isn't productive. So I want you to think about where you're going to write. Now, for me, if I go to a busy coffee shop, it's like there's almost too much stimulation. So I tend to turn inward. And this is important for me to recognize. One time I was actually at a busy restaurant and I was typing up. I don't remember what I was typing. I was working on a very long document, and as I'm working through this thing and working through it, this restaurant, it was also a bar. And it was like on a Friday afternoon, I went down there and I'm just typing. And I got down there, I don't know, like late in the afternoon, somewhere like 4:30 in the afternoon. And I had a sandwich, whatever, for late lunch. And then when I looked up, the place was a zoo, and it was like 10:30 at night on a Friday. And there was some game on. I don't even know what game, because I really didn't care, but there was some game on, and it was a bar now, right? Like all the patrons had left, and all the mutants came out, and they were all hanging out at this bar, and I was like, oh my gosh, where am I? I felt like it was craziness, right? And they're all wondering, like, why is some weirdo in this bar at 10:30, 10:45 at night on a Friday with his laptop, right? I just was in the zone because it was so crazy. And then I looked up, I was like, oh, I guess I should probably go home. And I did, right? Gathered my stuff and left. So this is what I'm saying. Like, this is where you have to start remembering, like, where is the best energy for you to do this, and where is the best time for you to do this. And I got a lot done that particular night. Probably wasn't, I don't really care about, people looking at me, but it was just, this is where you have to consider when the best energy is. And sometimes it may just come to you, and you just kind of have to set everything else aside. Right. So I also want to encourage you, and I didn't think to put this in, but I happen to think of this, but this is also where you need to enroll the other people in your life about writing this book, because if you're just going to say, well, I'm going to write it someday, we all know that someday is not a day on the calendar. So someday is like, well, what someday today could be today, like someday could be today, right? But it could be tomorrow, and that someday could be never. So I really want to encourage you to like figure out a time, when you're actually going to do this, of not just where you're going to write, but I want you to stage and set your environment, but I also want you to let the people know around you what it is that you're doing. Because if you have important people in your life, that, not to hold you accountable, because like many people like, oh, I'm going to ask my family to hold me accountable. I don't really know that that's their job to make sure that, because what's going to happen if they don't? What happens if you don't do the thing? Okay. So I would say, like, this is why a writing coach might be helpful for you to, exactly. ADHD brains are fire, right? I love that. Absolutely. Super creative. And sometimes hyper focus can also be an absolute blessing. So especially about getting things done. But about staging the environment, I really want you to think about this in terms of the people in your life that you need to enroll in your vision about writing this book, so you can get this thing written, and they're going to recognize that sometimes you might be home a little bit later or whatever, but this, generally, you can write a book somewhere between 90 and 120 days. There really does not need to take years to write a book. So I'm just letting you know, like right now, I'm about a third of the way through Leader Boss, which is my 9th book. And it's kind of right now sitting in the mental crock pot. I've got a couple things. I've got it pretty much framed out. And now I'm just kind of letting it sit, which is exactly what I did with Time Wealthy Advantage. That one only took me about a year to write and get published, which was significantly faster than my first one. But I also had been talking about it for so long, I finally got to the point of like, hey, look, either write the book or don't write the book, but quit talking about it. Just do it or don't do it. Right. And that's generally pretty much a standard when I'm at. So right now I'm in a PhD program for industrial and organizational psychology. And I had been thinking about it for years. And finally, I just kind of had to have that metaphorical grabbing myself by the shirt and looking at myself saying, look, either do it or don't do it. You're in your early 50s. It's a good time to do it. Either do it or don't do it, but stop talking about it. So I'm glad that I have those frank discussions with myself. Anybody else do that with themselves? Like have that, like, really clear conversation with yourself. Sometimes that's just what's necessary. So staging the environment is really important. And also recognizing that, like music with no lyrics, that really helps generate a lot of thought for me. This is what works for me. I like music with no lyrics. I actually like going to YouTube. No, this sounds super bizarre. I love the sound of city noise. You know what I'm talking about? Like the city noise, cars beeping, cars backing up, people yelling at each other. Like that's like, to me, I have no idea why, but that absolutely fires up my creativity. I have no idea why. It just, or, sometimes it's rainfall, sometimes it's thunder, but that is rain in the background. Yep, absolutely. YouTube has a ton of cool videos just like that, like Lauren was saying. And once you're kind of in that thread, then you get all these other ones, right? And there's it goes from sublime to magnificently weird. I'll let you be the judge of which. Okay, so that's pretty much it. The other thing about where, obviously we talked about where you're going to write, but I want you to think about where you're going to save your book copy. All right. And I want you to think about this. So we talked about where you're going to write. I'm going to leave it there, but saving and backing up, how are you going to manage conflicted copies? And I know there's a lot of people who write on Google Docs. Here's what I'm going to say. I like writing on Word just because it's what I'm familiar with. But I also want you to think about, like, what happens if you lost control of your doc and you weren't able to get it for whatever reason, and you wound up with, I want you to think about how you're going to manage conflicted copies, because you should absolutely have multiple copies of this in different areas. Like I have, when I was getting to the later stages of writing, I don't know where, oh, here it is. When I was writing in the later stages, I was keeping copies not only on my computer, but I was also keeping copies on my thumb drive. And what I would do is I would literally save it with a new file extension and say, like, for example, today, I would say like October 16th, 25, right? So, this blah, blah, blah. And then I would save it, and then I would save it to a thumb drive, and then I would save it back again. I might save it to OneDrive. Of course, we all know OneDrive, you really can't find anything ever again. So good luck with that. But if you can actually know how to work a thumb drive or know how to work OneDrive from Microsoft or whatever, I cannot tell you how important it is to keep copies of this, especially as you're working through things. And I like keeping them in progression, even if I'm working on it every day. I don't necessarily know that I would keep a new copy every single day, but if I start getting to certain milestones where I'm getting these chapters kind of, done and, ready for beta readers, these are the sorts of things that I would be doing. You have to make sure that you're saving them in places, like as many different places as you possibly can, because I'm telling you, as sure as God made little green apples, you will be like 98% of the way done with your book, and you'll have a hard drive crash, or someone will steal your computer or something, right? So, like, I'm just telling you, like, please don't put yourself through that drama. Please make sure that you're backing up. Carbonite's always a good thing too. That way it saves it offline or saves it online, so that way you can always get it from a different computer if you need to. So where you're going to save it, that's really important. The other thing I want you to think about too is I want you to think about how you're going to capture ideas when you're not in front of your computer, because I know everybody here can relate to standing in the shower and going, man, that would make such a good paragraph in my book. Or, man, that makes such a great business opportunity, or anything. Like, everybody else have ideas when they're standing in the shower or driving down the interstate or on a lawnmower, mowing the lawn, right before you fall asleep. Exactly, Lauren. And the reason for that is because you're in your alpha state. So we have 4 states of consciousness, and those 4 states of consciousness is, right now, I just clap my hands to bring you back to your beta state. And that beta state is your conscious state, right? It's not generally where you're most creative. Not that you can't be creative in your beta state, but when you're kind of, you're lost in thought, that's when you're in your alpha state. And your alpha state is generally driven and dictated by your subconscious mind. And that is really where a lot of our ideas come from, is from our subconscious mind. And when you're drifting into like your theta state, I refer to that as like pre-sleeping. And that's generally when my wife likes to ask me to buy things, and I'm like, oh yeah, okay, right, like, right, absolutely, we'll buy a new car, right, whatever. But all kidding aside, that's generally that theta state. That's like pre-sleeping. That's actually where your subconscious mind is almost all the way taken over. And by the time you get to your delta state, when you're fully asleep, that's when your conscious mind is fully shut down and your subconscious mind is fully has its hands on the wheel. So this is why I'm saying, like, I want you to start to consider, if you have notes on your phone where you can jot down notes when you have ideas, if you have a voice recorder when you're, say you're driving or you're standing in the shower and you don't have access to a notepad or anything like that, or especially even um, if you're a writer and you're like a physical writer, probably the best thing to do, especially like if you're laying down and that's when you tend to have all these ideas. Again, pen and paper, not so, because if you open up your screen, you're going to get the blue light. It's going to keep you awake. So again, Holly, I think it was you had mentioned that, you're a writer, then turn on an actual, maybe a book light and jot it down in the dark, right? Or actually just write it in the dark. Because I've written some pretty amazing things in the dark. I'm like, I have no idea what I was trying to say, but I got 5 words on there, and I think I know what I'm talking about on that. So I just want to make sure that you also know we're talking about all the wheres to consider, and that is the where you're going to capture your ideas is really, really critical. So I want you to think about that in advance. And you might have several different wheres. Like right now, I have ideas for 3 different books, and I need to categorize them the best way that I possibly can. And I know where I'm putting all this stuff as the ideas come in. So I just want you to think about that in terms of all of the wheres in your life. And again, the ideas that come in, it's never convenient when they actually happen, but just make sure that you're doing all of those things. So, all right. So where we're going to save it, where we're going to capture the ideas, and then all of we talked about, the whys, we talked about the wheres. Now we're going to talk about some of the writing. So I want you to decide a pace and a rhythm in advance. If you can write, like, for example, you can just say, hey, look, I'm going to write 500 words. And sometimes people are like, I don't really feel like writing today. Here's what happens sometimes. Sometimes you have to go out and find the motivation. Sometimes it's just about writing. Sometimes it's just writing just to write. And other times it might just, you might be flipping through some other pages. You don't really know what to work on. Sometimes just going back and skimming through stuff. I'm just going to encourage you to keep writing, but decide a pace in advance and a rhythm in advance. And I also want you to decide the point of what you're writing about in advance. Because if you're just writing about, sometimes you may not be able to, but the point is to just establish that rhythm and routine. I like to do it roughly around the same time every day. When I'm in my writing mode, I like to do it first thing in the morning. I'll do my reading. I have a reading thing. I'll spend some time in the Bible, and then I like to write. And I like to do all of that and be done with all of that before 9:30. And that for me works really, really well, because I know if I'm too tired, I'm not going to be writing critically the best way I want to write. And I want you to think about this too. Decide on the language you're going to write in advance. Like, for example, when you're thinking about writing and deciding on the language, you might write more formally or more informally. I have a person who's a good friend of mine who wants to write her personal story around, she comes from a family that's from the Middle East, and she wants to tell her story, and she is brilliant, like MBA engineering level brilliant, right? And I mean, she's very, very smart. And she writes like, and keep in mind, this is a heartfelt story, and she writes like she's writing a technical manual. And I'm like, look, this is a great story, but you're writing it like you're writing a legal brief. And she's like, oh my gosh, you're right. She's like, I'm so used to writing that way. I said, look, you can learn to speak a new language, and this language is going to come out in a different way. But this is why it's also important to have a beta reader that can look at this and say, yes, this is good writing, but are you trying to move me emotionally right now? Or are you trying to prepare me for closing arguments? Right. So this is where you need to decide on that language. For example, if you're writing, are you going to swear? Right. I don't generally swear. I say generally, like, I don't swear like in this sort of forum. I might if I like it, but it's always, I feel like if it's in a one-to-one setting or people that I know really, really well, I might swear a little bit. But, I don't ever really do it from stage. I can't say never, but I pretty much don't. And I don't really do it in my writing because I don't feel like I don't want to turn someone off from that sort of thing. So just for me, it's just a style preference. You may want to write like there's a woman, Jen Sincero. she writes funny books, right? She writes a book. I think she's got um, this whole series of books called Badass, like You Are a Badass, right? And she's got badass habits and badass money, making money and things like that, which she uses all sorts of colorful language in her writing. That works for her, right? But that's just not my style, and I just don't want to do that. So again, you have to think about that. Are you going to be, technical versus a story format? Like, are you going to be telling it like a parable? When I wrote The Judge, I wrote that as a parable, and it was really about a story that and I wanted to teach the lesson through a story. So also think about phonetics. So if you were going to be writing and that character has, like, one of the things that I do is I rope in, if you've ever read anything that I've read, I rope in a plot line within the story. So there's like, Sarah and Joe, Sarah and Jim and Sarah having this business, and they have these marital problems, and they have this and they have that, right? And it kind of weaves in that story all throughout the trainings. So then when they have this problem, I start talking about this, right? So it's a style that works well for me, and I really like it. And as I've developed it over time, I really, and there's other authors who do this, by the way. I'm not the only one I actually saw it done well in the 4-Hour Work Week. I kind of got the idea from that, but I feel like I do it a little bit differently than him. But again, it's just a style. He certainly wasn't the first person that did it either. I got the idea originally from Tim Ferriss. But decide on that in advance. So if you're going to write in like a Southern drawl, are you going to write it out like a Southern drawl? Or if there's a 3-year-old in the story, are you going to write it in 3-year-old, phonics? That's important for you to write out. Like, how are you going to be spelling this out phonetically? And how, again, how are you going to determine this? How are you going to make sure that that's what you want? I would also decide on an accountability partner, because that's going to be really important for you to think about from an accountability perspective, to say like, okay, like, who is going to be the one that's going to be holding me accountable? Ideally, not someone you are married to. Ideally, someone you're not related to. Like, you really need to be, and again, whether that's a writing coach, whether that's something, I'm not a writing coach per se, but I'm just saying, like, someone to hold you accountable that is not you. And what happens if you don't do the thing that you're supposed to do, right? Like, is someone going to post a check with your name on it written to a political party of your least favorite following, right? Like, oh my gosh, like, I've got to follow this, right? That's a big deal. So decide on an accountability partner in advance. That's a big, big deal. I want to make sure I made this other point. Oh yeah, I want to make sure this. So again, this is about deciding the point, but I want to make this point. I went on to something different. But many people are really concerned about writing a book that's too long. Listen, I've written a 300-page book. This is my last one. This is the 4th one, The Time Wealth Advantage. It's almost 300 pages, the longest book I've ever written. And there are people that are reading this book. So you're thinking, well, is it too long? No, there's not too long. There's only too boring. So you cannot be boring in your speech. So you got to make sure that you're telling these stories and getting to the point soon enough and keeping people engaged in your writing. So this is where you need me to be a better writer. And this is why I'm bringing this up, because I know there's a lot of people who are relying on AI right now to write books. And I'm not suggesting that AI cannot write engaging content, but if you want to be a good writer, sure, use AI if you're getting stuck or you're not really sure how to word something or whatever else it is, but do not use it as a crutch. Use it as a tool in your toolbox. So I'm just going to leave it there for AI, because there's plenty of books that are going to be written by AI and people will take the credit for them, and is what it is. But I'm saying, if you want to be engaging and you want to be a good writer, then just recognize that AI is a tool in the toolbox. Don't use it as a crutch. All right, we'll leave that there. So here is a statistic I just made up. 99.4% of people will not finish a book that they start. So yes, I just made that book that up, and I have no idea if it's true, but that is probably right. So I just want to encourage you. This is why you need an accountability partner to help you push across the finish line so you can actually get this thing done. And I want you to stay organized in your thoughts as best that you can. You can do that through index cards. I'm a little more old school. I like whiteboards. I like, again, index cards with different notes and stuff on it. This is actually, this note here is actually for the course that I just finished up about writing and publishing a book, right? So this last one is about Adobe Audition. What is Adobe Audition? Well, that's the sound engineering software that you use for creating Audible. Well, that was the last piece that I had. It's getting ready to be posted here. The video is very close to being done, but all the other videos are done. Well, that's what I wrote out on here, which was the last piece that I want to make sure that I hit those points in my advanced writing and publishing course around um, around Adobe Audition, right? So that's what I wrote. That's what I did for that last video. So I've got a couple of other videos to finish it up, but it's a really, really good course. It's a very granular course, and I wanted to make sure I didn't miss any points. So stay organized the best you can. For those of you who are more digital, there is mind mapping software called MindMup. Is the one that I like. There's MindMeister. There's all sorts of mind mapping software, but what it does is it really creates like a central node, and it creates all these other arcs off of it. It's really fascinating. I have used it. MindMup is like $25 a year, and you can create all sorts of different things around it. I've used it for creating courses. I have used it creating for seminars like this. All the different points that I want to make, and it really allows you to get granular. And you can create it. The best thing to do is just get in there and start playing with it, because I'm not doing it justice right now. But mind mapping software, if you've never used it, it's pretty cool. It's just the same that you could do by organizing business cards in terms of a tree or move things around. It's actually really, really slick. But then the other thing is, what I want you to think about is future pacing and callbacks. And this is what really makes a book really interesting, is that, hey, remember back in, chapter, whatever, right? Or we will discuss this in some future chapter. When you're doing this, one of the things I like to do is I'll literally do it like this. As I'm typing it in, I will say, as discussed, or as I previously discussed in chapter, and I will put X. And what I will do is I'll highlight it at that point. That way I know that when I go to when I'm doing the final editing, or I'm looking it over through to turn it over to an editor, then I'm going to know that I need to look back at that and say, did I discuss that in chapter 9, or did I move chapter 9 to chapter 7? Because if I don't, and that's off, you're going to lose people. So I don't want you to do that, and you're going to lose credibility. And the whole point of writing a book is so you can become authority. And this is especially important in business. So what I'm saying is, I will highlight that, call it chapter X, whatever, highlight it with a highlighting tool, and then go back and fix it. And then once I remove the highlight, I will know that it's been scrubbed, that it is actually accurate, because I've checked it in that moment. Is that making sense? So that is something that I like to do. So that helps me stay organized. The other thing is the citations and resources. And oh, sweet baby Jesus, I am flat in the middle of, like I mentioned, a PhD program I just started, and I am learning APA citation rules, APA 7 citation rules. Look, I don't think anyone is going to lose any sleep if you do not cite it properly, but I will tell you that make sure that you make citations and resources for your readers. And I can tell you that I in this last book, I made a lot of references to other authors and other books, and people really appreciated that, because they really felt like they got a good sense of what I was learning and where I'm getting my information from. And listen, no one's expecting you to have all these original thoughts, but you better be making references when it's appropriate. And sometimes there's, like, I just made a reference in my last video around the Adobe Audition. There was a female on YouTube that gave me a really, really great idea around how to save the different files, like a format that she uses to save files. Man, I wish I knew who she was, because it was like the best advice I've ever gotten from YouTube, because it was really easy for me to find it after the fact, and then I can upload it in order. And I'm not trying to figure out like all the different chapters and stuff. It was the way it was done was brilliant. And I wish I knew who it was. I can't give her credit because I can't remember her name. I just remember seeing it. I've tried to figure it out. I can't figure it out. So anyway, the citations and resources, again, I think it's important to make them, like, if you're going to make a claim, and this is something that drives me bananas about certain authors, I'm not going to say their names, but they're very popular authors, and they will make claims like, oh, most Americans think this. Really? How do you know that? You're making a claim about most Americans, and I can't say that I feel that same way. So am I the oddball, or are you just making things up? And there are very popular authors who do that crap all the time, just make sure that you're being careful in your language, especially if you're going to be writing a book for a business audience. It really does matter. I use writer's notes. Writer's notes are notes that you put in for yourself to make sure you're creating continuity in your message. So in other words, if you say, hey, in chapter 9, we're going to be talking about X, Y, and Z, right? You're going to say, hey, in chapter 9, we're going to talk more about the balance sheet and income statement. And you go to chapter 9 and you're talking about everything, and you never mention the balance sheet or income statement, you've now lied to your audience. So what I would do is if I'm in chapter 3, knowing that at some point in chapter 9, which is I've already, know that it's going to be around accounting or whatever, and I go to chapter 9, I'm going to create a little block in there that's going to say writer's note. Make sure you discuss this because you said in chapter 3 that you're going to talk about this. That's a great way to make sure that you're staying in continuity with what you're promising the author. So the author's notes are real, or the writer's notes are really, really important. And then you can delete the writer's note, right? Because you can create it in a different font or make it all caps, make it bold, do something there, or you can even highlight it so you know you're going to delete it afterwards. Again, this is about where you're going to be, writing as a craft. I don't really talk about this, but again, start thinking about where you can learn to write and just become a better writer. And it is beyond the scope of this particular session to start to looking at this from a writing as a craft. But these are 3 books that I love to reference. I'm going to go ahead and take myself down just so you can see this. But Bird by Bird by Anne Lamott, she is absolutely hilarious. And she's a different bird. I will say that, but she writes it's instructions on writing and on life. It's a really, really good book. Stephen King, On Writing is the name of this book. And it's not a book that you would expect Stephen King to write about. It's not any creepy, gory things. It's just the way it's about his writing and how he did that. And it's another one by William Zinsser on writing well. So these 3 books right here, I have read Anne Lamott's Bird by Bird and Stephen King's On Writing. I have not read On Writing Well by William Zinsser, but I have been given it by someone who I respect very, very highly, who's also helped me in my writing. She recommends that book, and I trust her judgment. She says, yeah, that book's really, really good. So I have not read that one yet, but that was another one that was a resource. But I'm just letting you know, this will also give you some ideas in terms of developing your writing craft. All right, so let's keep this ball rolling. We've got just a few minutes left. The most important thing that I'm going to tell you, and I'm just letting you know right now, is promotion. Because I will let you know that if you just put the book out there and if you think that you're going to start promoting it as soon as you publish the book, you will be disappointed. Because I'm telling you right now, like for right now, I have already started promoting Leader Boss, and I don't even know when it's going to publish. It might publish in the spring. I have no idea. But if it doesn't, I'm starting to promote it as early as I possibly can, because if you wait to do it, you're going to be disappointed. And that's exactly what I did at the Time Wealthy Advantage, the Time Wealthy Investor. That was my first book. I published it. And it's a good book. I put it out there to the world, and I was like, you're welcome, world. Here it is. That is my book. You are welcome. Nothing. I sold nothing for the first month. And then I started doing a little bit more promotion. And then after like 3 months, I sold like 12 books. I'm telling you, writing a book and selling a book are 2 different skills. And writing a book and promoting a book are very, very, like, writing's easy. Promoting it is difficult. I mean, like when you've written the book, you've done 10% of the work, because the rest of the 90% is getting other people that you're not related to buy it. Okay. So please make sure that you understand that. Now, this is beyond the scope around promotion, but my next book is, which is called Leader Boss, which addresses the struggles that bosses have with either being too nice, where they get walked all over, or they're too dictatorial and they become a tyrant, right? They're all about the darn rules and what rules are being followed and what rules aren't being followed, right? This is about leading with value. So again, when you're leading with value, about promoting yourself, like I just let you know what the book could be about. And you're like, that could be interesting. I just gave you some value. You're like, yeah, that could be me. That now I've just told you what the book might be about, or what the book will be about. And now you're like, okay, I'm interested. So could this be a form of promotion for it? Sure. Right. It's not really what I'm doing right now, but just in the simple fact that I'm helping promote it about what it's about, that's me leading with value. That's me showing you what could happen because you're either too nice or you got too much candor. So you've got to be able to balance that equally. So I'm just letting you know, if you're leading with value, it's never shameless promotion if you lead with value to a crowd that is interested in what you have to say. If I was saying this thing in front of my church, it might only resonate with a handful of people. But if I was saying this in front of a group of business folks, they'd go, yeah, I absolutely have that struggle. Is I feel like I'm either too caring, and if I'm too caring, they walk all over me. Or if I'm getting them to follow the rules, then I can get them to barely do the bare minimum. Right? It's like I could never ask anybody to pull. It's like pulling teeth, asking to work some overtime or come in on a Saturday. Yeah, because they're only going to do the bare minimums because they feel like you're a jerk, you're a tyrant. Okay. Ask me how I know. I've been on both sides of that equation. So I'm just letting you know, promotion, that cannot be an afterthought. That has to be the first thought. And then the fact is the product is a book. So the one thing that I put up here is, you can get snippets released prior. So you can get book buyers gathered in Facebook groups. There's lots of groups out there. But one of the things that I'll do is I'll take a particularly well-written paragraph, for example, and I will always post it as a picture. Sometimes there's a picture that I'll put up there and I'm sitting looking pensive or something else like that. And then I'll post the paragraph and then I'll say excerpted from Leader Boss, which will be promoted, which will be published in, sometime spring of 2026 as an example. And that's a great way to help promote the book in advance. And when people are like, oh, cool, I want to get a copy, you darn well know that they're getting their name put on a list. So when I do, I'd say, hey, you mentioned you want to buy a copy. Here it is. Okay. And I always want them to buy it through me rather than through Amazon because I don't mind doing the fulfillment. So that is pretty much it. So the publishing of it, there's some nuances to consider here. You can consider working with an agent, which is great. You can self-publish, which is my preference, because I can control all the rights and all of the intellectual property. Or you can kind of do a hybrid model. And those hybrid models, they go from where it's almost everything is in the agent's control or a lot of it's in your control and kind of everything in between. I'm very familiar with the self-publishing model just because I went down that road. I started down that road. And for me, it's always been better for me to control that. Now I'm writing some other books where I have a much larger audience that could reach. So I'm certainly more open to working with an agent, but especially as I start putting out more volume in different books, I can still self-publish some of my own stuff and I can still put other stuff away, which I'm not worried about the intellectual rights around. But the publishing, I'm just letting you know that whatever you don't pay for in dollars, you give up in control. Think about that. So if you're going to give them control and say, hey, I want you to do all the marketing and all the promotion and everything else, I'm just letting you know that they're expecting to be paid by book sales. So I'm just saying you're going to give up more control, but because you're not paying for that in dollars. Me, I pay for my own lead generation. I pay for my own fulfillment, right? I'm buying the books. I have a stack of books over there that people buy. And when they do, I box it up, I put the address label on, and I'm bringing it to the post office, which I don't mind doing, right? For me, that's part of the fulfillment because I'm not looking to sell tens of thousands of books. If I sell, a couple hundred a year, that fulfills what my vision is for this particular book. Okay. So just keep that in mind, whether you want to work for an agent or you want to work for someone else. So, or you want to do self-publishing. The book cover design itself, this is something I want you to think about when when you are working with someone else. And that is something that should be decided after the title and after the subtitle. So the title of the book is the hook. The subtitle is the promise. Think about that. So in this particular case, again, and every book doesn't have to have a subtitle or subheading. So you've got this book here. The heading, right? The title is The Time Wealthy Advantage. Doesn't tell you much. But that's the hook. Time Wealthy. Wonder what that's about, right? So it gets you to read the subheading, a strategic approach to building the life and business you want. Oh, it's a business book. Strategic. Okay. So that's the promise. So think about it. Any other book that you read, pick it up and look at the title. That's the hook and go, that's the hook. And then you've got the promise, that the strategic approach to building a life and business you want. Does this book deliver on that promise? It absolutely does. So I'm just letting you know, like you want to come up with that. And the way that I do that is I test the market. So I will do this, and there's people who know this about me. They will go, "Hey, do you have a second?" They're like, "Sure." I'm like, "Hey, which of these titles grabs you?" And they're like, "I think I like that one." Okay, great. What out of A, and so out of A and B, you chose B. Now I might say, okay, between B and C, which one do you like? And I go, I still like B. Okay, cool, right? So now you're kind of getting like a bracket, right? So once you realize how that works, then you can do the same thing with a subheading. And you go, okay, tell me about the subheading. And they're like, okay, I've got A and B. And they're like, I like A. Okay, cool. And they're like, how do you like A and C? They're like, I like C. Like, cool. What do you like between B and C? They're like, I still like C. Right. So you have this bracketing system where people are really looking at it. Now, once I know like what people like, and realistically, that's exactly how I decided the cover. The cover that I wanted, no one liked. Ugh, what are you kidding me? Like no one liked it, and I loved it. But the cover was decided. 70% of the people who said that they liked this cover, this is the cover I went with. And even though the other cover that I saw, I really liked all the covers. I don't think I could have gone bad with any one of the three, to be honest with you. But 70% of the people liked this cover over the other two options. This is what I went with, right? So I just want to let you know that is a really that you have to go about this scientifically, and this is exactly how you do your lead generation. So that's the title and subtitle. So the again, this is, I'm sorry, I guess I could have. So these are the two that I started with. A business owner's 5-step strategic blueprint to freedom. That was the one. That was A. And then a business owner's strategic blueprint to freedom. That was B. Right. So that's they eventually went up with strategic approach to building the life and business you want. That was C. That's what people end up deciding on. Right. So that's exactly what I went with. The other quick things, we're almost done here. Amazon KDP is the publishing format that I've used. If you are going to go with your own ISBN, which gives you more control in terms of where the book is listed and is available for sale. This is the International Standard Book Number. Every book, with the exception of an ebook, every book has to have an ISBN. So you can get one through Bowker. You can buy, if you want to talk about a racket, you buy one for like 150, and you can buy like 10 for like 250. I don't even know. So whatever it is, you can buy. I ended up buying 10 because I knew I was going to be using them, but I'm just letting you know that ISBN, you can get it from Bowker, or you can have Amazon assign an ISBN for you if you prefer. So when it comes to publishing on Audible, I'm just letting you know, like Audible, it does have to have its own ISBN, but I'm just telling you, narrating is hard. It's reading out loud is also a great way to edit. But if you are going to do that, and if you are going to put your book on Audible, you actually have to have it on ebook first, because it will not let you publish it to Audible because it's going to be using the same format for the chapter headings from the ebook. I didn't know that. So I had no intention of making the Time Wealthy Advantage an ebook. And I was like, recorded all the video or all the audio, and I was getting ready to upload it to KDP, and I was like, what the heck? And it was, I had to put it up on ebook really fast, even though I had no intention of putting it up as an ebook. I will tell you though that, the revisions is actually kind of nice, because, you can go back in on KDP, and, as I'm reading it out loud, it's a nice kind of poor man's way of doing the edit, because if the sentence structure is kind of wonky, or it's like, oh shoot, I put an extra "the" in the sentence, you can fix it, and you can always go back and fix it again once it's uploaded to KDP. So that's actually kind of nice. So I'm just making my point here. Let me say that again another way, because I know we're getting near the end, and I want to make sure I'm making this point. If you are going to edit the book yourself, I would suggest don't publish the book first. Wait to publish it, read it out loud, and then you can say, that's a good finished copy. And then you can be recording this. Again, you should be recording it on like Adobe Audition, and that way you can audit you can edit the audio files right in Adobe Audition. And the nice thing is that after you've read it, you already know you've read it out loud. It looks good. Then you can go ahead and publish. the physical copy, then you can format and publish the ebook, and then you can upload after you've edited all the audio files. Then you can upload that to Audible. So that's the format. That's the order it has to go in. Or you can just do ebook and then do Audible. You don't have to do a physical copy if you don't want. The revisions, and that's what I'm saying, as you're doing the revisions, one quick thing I just want to make. So there was a small error on this cover. So I fixed it and then I resubmitted it, and it takes a while for revisions to actually work through the system. So just understand, if you do have a revision that you need to put in and you change it, it may take a few dozen books or more before they start printing the new copy. And I want you to, this is the last thing I have to say, and then we're going to be wrapping up. I just want you to recognize that there are some limitations for editors, for book editors. They're looking for grammar, they're looking for commas, they're looking for certain things. They may miss, like if you made a reference to something in chapter 3 and there's no reference to it in chapter 7, they may miss that. They may miss continuity. They might miss certain plot line, flaws. They may miss that. So I'm just letting you know there are certain limitations around editors, and this is why it's also important to have beta readers who are your friends and your family, who will kind of tell you, yeah, I'm kind of losing track of who this, you said he on this sentence 4 times. I'm not sure which he you're talking about. I'm like, oh yeah, it's a little awkward, right? So you can go in, and that is why you also have to have beta readers in addition to an editor. All right. So that's everything that I talked about there. One of the things, again, that I talked about in this, if you are interested in a copy of this, again, you can get it on Amazon if you really want. But again, I'm not really here to promote that. I'm just letting you know, like right now, the main thing that I want to give you some free, I want to give you some free resources right now. And if you are interested in this, what did I do with? I don't know what I did with it. So a couple of things I want to share with you right now. First and foremost is a Facebook group. If you're interested in joining me on Facebook, there's no cost to this. Obviously, you can just join me if you are a business type. It is a business type group. So if you're interested, you can join us in the Facebook community, and that is it's called the Time Wealthy Advantage Facebook group. I don't post a bunch of stuff in there. I post some videos in there from time to time. I don't tag at everyone every single time because that gets super annoying. But I just like to put that out there for people who want to stay in touch and may be interested in stuff that I have to offer. Some free stuff, some paid stuff. It's just a mechanism for us to keep in touch. If you're interested, just don't be a jerk. Like if you're a jerk, don't come. Like seriously, it's one of the questions. So don't be a jerk. Secondly, I'm also going to offer to you, if you like courses like this, business related stuff, I'm going to send you to my website, which is called strategicboardroom.com /events. And that is going to let you know any other events that I have coming up that you can sign up for. Lauren is good enough to put these links in there for us. Just copy and paste them into your browser. There is one thing I just want to share with you. And again, this will be the last thing we'll wrap up. But this is something, if you're interested in this, it's a free course. It's actually, again, at strategicboardroom.com. If you go to courses and logins, Lauren's going to go ahead and put this in there. But this is where you can go to courses, logins. But this is what she's putting in there right now. It's actually a free writing and publishing course. I'm just going to show you the paid version. So it actually, because the paid version actually includes both the free version and the paid version. I'm just going to show you where that is. So let me figure out, if you want to hang out for just an extra minute here. If you have to go, I understand. You're not going to hurt my feelings. I understand this is going a little long. I didn't plan for it to be this long. I do apologize. I'll have to adjust the timing of my overly wordiness. So hang on one second. And this is it right here. Let me move this to that screen. Okay. And I'm going to share this screen right here. So what you're going to see here is, this is what the inside of the free course looks like. And there's also a paid version of this as well. So what this looks like here, I keep zipping by there. So this is the advanced writing course. So there's just a couple sections in here, and I'm going to show you what all the free stuff is. So the link that she put up is to the free version. And there's a paid version at the very bottom of the course if you want to continue on. So there's no risk at all. So this is going to be, how to write and publish a book. There's an intro, why you should write a book, all of the appropriate wheres, which is some of the stuff that we talked about. When you start writing, we talked about some of this, different things to consider along the way. And there's different levels of promotion in here that I talked about in here that I couldn't get to today just because there wasn't enough time. And there's certain publishing basics that you want to look at, and also some some different mistakes that you want to avoid. And this is a webinar that I had done that's very similar to what we just did today. And right there is where the initial course ends. So I wanted to let you know it is going to be a lot of a repeat of, some of the repeats of what we talked about today, with the exception of some promotional stuff that you can do. The paid course starts with some advanced promotion items. Thank you, Lori. I'm glad to have you on there. Lesson 8 starts with the advanced promotional stuff about getting more granular, getting clear on who, and there's some downloads there. This is more advanced promotional tactics on different things that you can do when it comes to generating leads to buy your book. So this is really important, especially if you have a book and you really don't know what to do or really even where to start on promoting your book. That video is really helpful around creating hooks, different copy, and different offers that you can do, promoting them on Meta, which would basically be Instagram and Facebook. There are some delivery ideas that you can do. I use a format called a black box. People flip and love it. And there's different things that you can do. Some people buy bubble mailers. I like to make it a big presentation. So when people order books from me, they get it in a black box. It's an event. Like they make it an event for them. Getting your ISBN, I actually walk you through on Bowker on how to actually do all of this and what to fill in, because Bowker is not super user friendly, but I just show you how to do that, and that saves you a ton of time on actually how to do that and how to find it and where to come up with your ISBN. And also what you can expect on the KDP platform. There are 3 separate pages on KDP, and this walks you through every single one of those pages on what you can expect on the KDP platform when you publish your book. And then formatting your print book for Kindle, and then uploading your book to Kindle on how to do that. So there's certain things that you have to do within Word and within or Google Sheets or however you're going to do it. I'm familiar with Word, so that's what I showed you how to do that on. And then preparing to narrate, there's certain things you have to know about narrating your book on Audible. And then that last one, which I'm actually getting ready to upload that here in just about like 20 minutes. So this one here is actually how to narrate your book on Adobe Audition. And there's a couple of other smaller things I'm going to be putting up there, but that is the nuts and bolts of the paid course. Right now, the paid course is $17. Is literally the cheapest thing you're ever going to get from me, because this course is also part of a larger course that I have, which is the Life and Business Blueprint. That is every course I have ever created is in the blueprint. So if you want that, you can actually get that at the courses and logins. You can get that. You'll get everything. You'll get that plus all the updates. But if you just want this one because you're like, nope, I'm good, this is all I need, it's $17, and you'll have forever access to that. So if you buy it today, and you have to buy it today, okay, for $17, I will give you a 30-minute coaching session with me. So I'm just letting you know, if you buy it and you want that and you get it, you're good to go. If you buy the $197 course, which is available at strategicboardroom.com/courses and logins, it's the first one. It's the very first one. I will give you a 60-minute coaching session. So if you buy that one for $197, I will give you that as well. All right, that's all I have. Have a great rest of your day, guys. Thanks for sticking around. See you next time.